Hello everyone and welcome back. Now I have a pretty interesting video here. Maybe not so much what white does that's interesting. I really want to talk more about red in this battle, who's the enemy. And it seems like that white has a much better army in this battle, and it really had a good counter to red's army. That's what I originally thought. But as the battle progressed, I realized that red actually had a pretty good chance of winning this battle. But anyway, let's talk about the setups. I'll talk a bit more about red later, but let's just look at the armies we're dealing with here. Over here on white, we have 10 Naginata Warrior Monk Cavalry, 6 on this side, 4 on this side. And then his infantry component is, let's see, 6 Lone Swords and 3 Yari Ashigaru. And that's it, no ranged units. Meanwhile, over here on red, we can see 1 Katana Cavalry over here. And then here we have a Matchlock Samurai and a Matchlock Ashigaru, 3 Bow Warrior Monks, 2 monks and then 1 Samurai. Then we have 2 Naginata Samurai, a Yari Hero, and 3 Nodachis. Back here is another Naginata Samurai. He also has 2 Katana Cavalry that come out a little later. So look at white, very attacking oriented army. I mean, this army is meant to just rush you and just kick your ass as soon as possible. So how could red have fought this army pretty well? He has a big numbers disadvantage, obviously. It's a lot less to work with. So let's talk about advantages, strengths, and weaknesses. Obviously, huge cavalry advantage for white. Even if red pulls some cavalry out of the forest, it's not going to nearly match the numbers that white has over here. I mean, he has a lot of veterans too. Just looks like really great cavalry component. Infantry-wise, though, I think it's pretty even. Red probably has an advantage if you count morale. A good charge from the Nodachis could break the Lone Swords pretty easily, especially if his general dies. White really has to take care of his general. So that's what red probably should have been focusing on, is killing white's general. He's going to be really passive in this game, or in this match, and that's really bad. If he'd been aggressive, he could have probably won this battle. I'll talk more about what he should have done a little later, but anyway. For missile advantage, that's obviously all in red's favor. White has no ranged units. So against an army like this, how do you go fighting an army with such a huge focus on attack? I'll tell you how. This is going to be an interesting battle because I'm going to be talking more about this battle from red's perspective, actually. The enemy and how he could have won. Now he's going to move up a little bit, but he's going to camp, and that's a bad idea. You don't want to be camping when the enemy has such a good attacking force, and especially because his entire infantry component is Ashigaru. You got to kill that general. That's a big weakness for white. In fact, white has a leadership general, so it'll be easier to kill him. He's not melee, so a good charge could wipe out his bodyguard unit even. But he's going to play passively, and that's just such a bad decision. White has so much cavalry, and the Naginata Monk Cavalry is actually not so good. They're kind of, they're like Naginatas. They're just kind of balanced. If he had put his army in the forest, in fact, I would have used this tree line up here. I would have sprinted for this tree line, get all my infantry in here, and just try and, come out of the forest, try and skirmish a little bit, keep my spears really close to the ranged units, and try and just skirmish as much as possible, and maneuver my cavalry around to hit white's general. If he can take out white's general, he'd be pretty screwed. He has a lot of cavalry, but red also has a lot of spears, including a Yari hero. So, and these matchlocks too can get some good shots in the cavalry as well. So if he killed the general and put himself in a spot where cavalry cannot fight very well, red could win this battle. But instead he's going to camp right out in the open. Really bad idea. Fairly classic setup, just kind of infantry behind here. The spears are kind of in the middle, Nodachis in the back. My setup would have been like this. I would have actually, well, I would have attacked. But here's how I would have done it. White is splitting up his cavalry. 6 over here in the west, and then 4 over here in the east. Unfortunately, he didn't do a good job of hiding his cavalry, so white knows that there's going to be cavalry here, so he's looking for him. But what I would have done is probably would have hidden my cavalry, got him as close to white's lines as possible before they were found, and then made a beeline toward white's general. My early cavalry action would just be trying to kill his general, because if you can kill the general, his Ashigaru infantry would be nearly useless and will break with 1 Nodachi charge, no problem. So I would have advanced my missiles up here in the front, because I would have been skirmishing, but my Nodachis would have been right up here in the front, and my spears would be on reserve in the rear, just to guard against cavalry, and they move as one, like a big turtle shell, spears protecting against cavalry, and I try and slam just right into the front of white's army, keeping my spears around them in a shell, so his cavalry would have nowhere to charge except right into the spears. I'm trying to keep my general safe too, right behind the enemy. He could have attacked white and won this battle. But instead he's just going to camp, and that's just going to let white dictate how this battle is going to go. That's why you don't want to be passive. Camping is just a bad strategy. And you'll see it. The only thing that you can really win with in camping is if you abuse matchlock veterans. I believe the matchlocks are not veterans, they're fresh, and as such are pretty well balanced. So you just can't depend. You have to hope you get a bad player. That's the only way you can win if you camp, is if you get a bad player. It's just letting the enemy be proactive and decide how the battle's going to go will make you lose if you're fighting a good player. And white's going to do a good job. One of the cavalry got found. Katana cavalry, he's already gone. Did hardly any damage. Did he even do any damage? Killed, what, 3 or 4 guys? Really bad. It was wasted a cavalry unit there. Now he has 2 more hidden over here. But he's just, I mean, look how passive he is. And now white is going to be able to go on ambush patrol. And there we go. A Katana and a Yari cavalry have been found. Now he's just setting up in a classic position, but look at this. Another reason why I don't want to camp is that you just have too much ground to cover. He needed to be a lot more compact. With 10 cavalry units, you have to have a thick spear wall. I mean, your spear use has to be exceptional. And spreading them out like this, look at these avenues. Here's a clear avenue for cavalry attack. 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 Especially with the hills, like, look at the terrain. Not a good shot. They probably shoot for the first time when the cavalry's down here protected by the hill and just fly right over their heads, or the bullets would go right into the ground. So just really bad. Just if red had been aggressive, he could have won this battle. White had no real quality infantry, and there are some vets here, but still they're Ashigaru. And if he had killed the general, a good bonsai charge would have just slaughtered his infantry component, and with good spear coverage in the rear, he would have been able to shut out those cavalry units and keep his Yari hero maybe on reserve, not part of the main spear line, and go where the cavalry is thickest, and could have just cut down all these cavalry units. Because I'm really not impressed with these Naginata monk cavalry. They're kind of mediocre, I think. They're kind of jack of all trades, and I don't think that's a good thing for a cavalry unit to have. I really like the charge bonus and such. I don't really care that they can't stand and fight, just need to get off a good charge. So I don't know, I'm not a big fan. Even if you did, I mean, if I'm thinking about cavalry, I kind of want it to be one or the other. I wouldn't want mediocre in both. I either want cavalry that can stand and fight, or can get off a really good charge. Now here, look, white is going to make his first move, and look, there's just too much ground for him to cover, and white's cavalry is just going to be able to plow right through that little hole, and ooh, took a nice little charge even into the Katana Samurai. And red's just going to collapse here. There's just no way he can just sit here, because white's going to be able to make all the moves, and all he needs is one cavalry to feign, and red can't react without opening up holes in his line. That's why you don't want to react. You want to be proactive and you know, call your own shots, because if you let white dictate where he's going to charge, he can just split up all of his units, and suddenly you have holes in your spear wall, and everything's just going to go to hell, because now everybody's getting charged from the rear. There go the matchlocks, so they've been getting off good shots. I think those were bows, actually, but you'll see matchlock shots going into the ground. Yeah, do you see that? I'll zoom in a little more. But just a terrible angle, so the matchlock bullets, if you can see them flying through the air, there are none right now. But they're just going to go into the ground, so no shot there for the matchlock. Picked a terrible spot to camp. Is that a good shot? Yeah, that's going right into the infantry. So white's close enough that the shots are now able to actually hit the infantry forces. But at this moment, he's kind of got a good spear wall. I don't know what he was doing with his cavalry. He could have snuck him around and flanked. I mean, there's so much he could have done. He could have been doing a better job of blocking charges. Didn't block any charges, really. He's just kind of running out and reacting once they hit the line. So white's going to make it look really easy here. And he did a good job. I mean, he surrounded the enemy. He made him the guy who's in charge, called the shots, and red just crumbled because you can't react to that. When the enemy has such a big advantage, especially in the cavalry department, you can't let him call the shots, or he's going to be the one just running all over you like this, exploiting holes in your line, because he only had 4 spear units to deal with 10 cavalry. So all he needs to do is feign with 1, and there's a hole in your defense. You devote 4 cavalry units to opening up holes in the spear wall, and the other 6, which is a ridiculous amount of number that your infantry cannot deal with, those other 6 can just walk right in and just totally annihilate you. So when I first watched this battle, I thought, man, red just has a really not a very good army composition, and white's is a pretty good counter to red's army. And that's true. Red didn't have a very good army for dealing with this. Yeah, White has a cavalry-heavy army, and Red's was kind of ranged-heavy, and ranged-heavy forces have a hard time dealing with cavalry-heavy forces. But I'm not convinced that he was screwed in this battle. His army could have dealt with this, but he chose to sit here. Just didn't have a very good defense at all. But if he had been proactive, I think he could have pulled this battle out. If he kept, because then when you're the attacker, you can choose how thick your line is going to be. So he could have had a very compact line of infantry. So the 4 spear units could cover the ground. Because look how wide he was, kind of. I mean, look at these 3 units right here. These 3 lone swords. He could have fit all of his infantry into the width of about these 2 lone swords here. So it'd be from like right here all the way to here. And if he would have just crammed his infantry units into a small space, he could have had a nice little semicircle of spears that wouldn't have allowed the cavalry to get through. And his Nodachis could have just tore right through the katanas, or not even katanas, or lone swords. They could have just torn through the Ashigaru, and with good early cavalry action, he could have done 2 things. 1, kill the general outright, which would have been ideal. Or he could have at least just distracted a bunch of cavalry, because White's not going to be able to move very quickly to react to cavalry, so he would at least have peeled some cavalry away from the infantry line to deal with his cavalry. So just a really botched battle. I guess he was just really timid, but come on, look, he's rank 9, or rank 8. You can't be timid at this point. You gotta learn to be proactive and make your own battles. And White made his own battle here. He was entirely the one calling the shots, and it shows, because Red just got torn apart. And it didn't have to be like that. It could have at least been a lot closer than this, because Red just had no chance. And I want to kind of preemptively deal with maybe a criticism of White's army. It seems like a lot of people complain about rush armies. And I don't think you can really just generalize like that and call armies like rush armies and say they're all cheap. Some armies work on a faster timetable than other armies. The difference between, like, I think when people think of a rush army, they think of just spam. Like, if your strategy is right click on the enemy and watch your guys go to town, yeah, that's a rush army in my opinion. An army that is based on just swarming the enemy from all sides isn't necessarily a rush army, because there are some serious weaknesses with White. That's the thing about it. It's a very powerful army. There's a lot of offensive power in this army, definitely. But there are serious weaknesses too, and that's the important thing, that there's balance. White's entire infantry component is Ashigaru. Killing the general will just cripple his army, and with the Naginata monk cavalry, they can't stand and fight quite so well. So especially, you just need a couple spear units could just totally annihilate his cavalry component if you do a good job of covering your infantry line. Your samurai could rip through the infantry, and you could definitely beat this army. I don't think this is a very cheap army. I really don't. It's just a way of thinking. But please feel free to disagree in the comments. This is a pretty interesting battle. I think it's very illustrative of why just being totally reactive is such a bad strategy. Because Red he couldn't control anything about the battle. White just played him. Just played him like a puppet. Made him do what he wanted him to do. And this battle was just, right when the first cavalry hit the infantry line, it was just over, because he was just going to get swarmed and couldn't do anything. So White did a good job controlling the battle. That's what you need to do. You need to control the battle, get good enough so you're winning your own battles through proactive action, and not just kind of sitting there hoping your enemy sucks or makes a mistake. So anyway, we'll just watch the end of this. Got some routing, and thanks for watching, everybody. I also want to mention one more option that Red could have done. He had his cavalry kind of conserved in the middle of his force there, and that could have worked if he would have slipped him out of his infantry and around White's cavalry after they had been committed. He could have charged them from the rear and routed the cavalry, and then just focused everybody on just cutting through the Ashigaru, which would have been no problem without any cavalry support. So that's just one more option. I wanted to say this in the video because I just thought of it, and I don't know if everybody reads like the more info and stuff. So that would have been another option, I think, that Red could have done. I was just disappointed by that battle. I think Red could have done so much more, but he just sat there and it was terrible. So congratulations to White. Good battle. I forgot to mention his username, but he's a viewer, so he'll let himself be known. So good job, White. Bad job, Red. I hope you learned something. Hope we all learned something, and thanks for watching.